most of our emotions actually do have a physical connection to certain parts of our body. So every part of our body that is currently connected to an emotion, usually emotion we've suppressed. And remember, most of these emotions we've suppressed all of our life. Now, I don't know if many of you have tried to hold a position, like with a weight, hold a position for as long as possible in that one place. Like if you pick up a weight, you pick up something that's heavy, and even it doesn't have to be too heavy, you just hold it in a certain position that's uncomfortable, and then try holding it there for a minute, and 2 minutes, and 3 minutes, and 5 minutes, and 10 minutes. Now, if you ever get to an hour, which most people actually don't, what starts happening? All this lactic acid builds up in your body, all the muscular system in your body starts to... And you start even using your mind to detune from the pain. And in fact, you can almost completely detune from the pain that your body is obviously feeling. But when you take the weight away and then try to move that arm, what's it like? That's when you feel the extreme pain. Do you understand? And your soul's a bit like that as well. All of your life you've been in denial of specific emotional pressures, emotional pain, and that have a relationship to all of the physical pains in your body, and you've been in denial of them, holding on to them. And denial can be right from denial through to having your addictions met with them, or avoiding your fears, of course. So all of that denial is like a build-up of pain over your life. Now, by the time we hit half a century old, that's a lot of pain that's now built up over a long period of time that we've been completely desensitised to. Now, when we start doing body therapy of some kind, like some kind of body work, the majority of times it circumnavigates the mind. It stops the mind from interfering with what's going on in the body. So in other words, if the average person thinks about their emotions, they will generally not get into their emotions because they've used their mind for the majority of their life to deny their emotions. And so their mind has become a tool of the soul-based desire to deny. So everything you do in your mind generally at that point, and this happens usually by the time we're 7 years of age, it's well established, and then we continue that process right the way through, generally through the rest of our life. But in this process of denial, there's a build-up of all this emotion and also a relationship with the build-up of all the pain, physical pain in your body as well. So now you've got two things building up. Now normally we try harder to suppress them. So we suppress the pain through medication, through taking pills and using medical techniques to suppress the pain. And the emotional pain, we also have a tendency to suppress that using different techniques, including avoidance completely, or we use techniques, again, reliant on the medical profession, like things like taking antidepressants or some other kind of medication to avoid the emotional pain and so forth. And these particular two things usually happen at the same time. We're trying to do both things at the same time. Because if we allow the physical pain to expose, it will also start triggering the emotional pain. And if we allow the emotional pain to be exposed, it will start affecting the physical pain. So what we do is we suppress both. That's the only way we manage. We think it's managing, I should say, because it's not actually managing anything if you think about it. It's building up this emotional pain until such a point that at some point in the future there is going to be some kind of a breakdown, either of the physical body or the emotional self. There's going to be a breakdown of one of those two things. And the extreme breakdown of that is death, yes. The cause of our own death. Now, that's what we normally do. What this man has done is started to trigger a process where your mind can no longer be involved in the process of what's going on at the soul. And by pressuring certain points in the body, and you're allowing the release of it. Now, in the process of allowing the release, sometimes you get into resistance. During those times, you're going to have more pain. So your pain will intensify at the times and you're going to have resistance. But when you release the resistance, the pain will lessen as well. And in fact, you'll get to the point where you won't have any more physical pain, because you know that if you allow the emotional pain straight away, the physical pain won't even be present anymore. So you get to that point. But you're not yet at that point.
No, it'd be nice.
No. But when you think about it, 2 months, and how old are you now, Catherine?
68 this
So
year.
you're 68. So for 2 months you've only been doing this process, basically. And this, by the way, is the real process. All of the talking about the process that's happened up till now was just talking about it. This is the actual real process. This is what it's like, where you can't avoid it any single day. You just can't avoid what's going on. You can't avoid processing through it emotionally. You can't avoid the physical pain of it. You can't avoid any of these things. That's the real process that we're talking about to people about emotional processing. That's what we mean by emotional processing. So all this conceptualised ideas about emotional processing that most people have, you know, that they think that they can just have a thought and work a way through something and then have a little cry for 5 minutes, that's not emotional processing. Emotional processing is what you're doing now.
Well, at least that's something.
That's something, right? So you're ahead of most of us in that regard, because most of us aren't even doing that, right? But the key now is to understand what's going on inside of yourself. Every time you resist an emotion or you resist a pain, which remember is always caused by an emotion, there will be more pain. Every time you allow the pain or soften to the pain, there will be less pain. And that's the way you learn after a while how you can manage all the pain in your entire body, by just allowing the emotion that the pain triggers. So it is rare now for me to have pain in my body. Does it make sense? Mm-hmm. In comparison to the pain I had in my body like 8-9 years ago. It was very, very intense pain all the time in my body. Now it's very rare. But I've had to go through this process. Right? And I've had to trust God that the process is not infinite. In other words, I'm not an infinite being, and since I'm not an infinite being, the emotion that's stored in me cannot be infinite. So therefore, if I release it, at some point it's all got to go.
Yes.
It's not going to go on forever. Now, many people start the process, and after it's been going for a couple of months, they start getting worried that it's going to go on forever. But when you think about it...
That's what it feels like.
That's what it feels like. But 2 months in 68 years, if you work that out as a percentage, that's not a very high percentage of emotional processing when you think about it, is it?
No, it's not. So I've probably got another 10 years to go.
Not of the intensity that you're facing, no. If you keep allowing this process to go on, I'd be surprised if it lasted another year or even another 6 months. It just depends on what you allow as to how long it will last. Obviously, if you tip out a bottle of water slowly, then it's going to take longer to empty. If you tip it out quite rapidly and you're able to cope with that and you're trusting God through that process, then it'll happen very, very rapidly generally. And so it won't take years and years. It will take months and months, but not years and years. We can't expect it to take no time at all. We can't expect instant change. Whenever there is an instant change, then we should automatically be suspicious.
Right.
Because no instant change can occur in the soul. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah.
The only instant changes that can occur is getting overcloaked by a spirit. And they then impose a certain emotion upon you. So then there's instant changes. So that's what I'm saying. We need to be careful of instant changes. Instant changes are usually the results of spirit interference in this process. Most other changes, soul-based real changes, are going to occur over a period of time. But how fast that time is will depend on our allowance of what goes on during that period. So what you're experiencing is a heap of emotional release at different times of the day in particular. You're experiencing quite a lot of physical pain, which you're having to allow yourself to soften to and feel. And sometimes you get into resistance about that.
Yes.
Yeah. And therefore the pain intensifies or the interference with spirits intensifies during those times. And that's a feedback system telling you that's not the way to go. the best thing to do is to soften to the process.
Yes, right. Well, that's probably good, because I think the pain in the last few days has been getting worse. So
Yeah,
presumably I've been resisting it more.
exactly.